Is owning better than renting? Is renting better than owning? Delving into some of the mysteries and questions that commonly surround the age-old and ancient question in real estate. My name is Greg de Denus with the de Denus team, and let's get right into it. All right, so the first thing to do, renting versus buying, obviously is looking at the cost in your marketplace. One thing that causes people to enter the housing market is, generally speaking, when their rent goes up. In Canada, we've decided that it's very, very wise to basically have constant adjustable rate mortgages, which caused the gigantic financial collapse in 2008. We think that that's a good way to be up here, but we'll leave that for another video. Generally speaking, affordability is one of the key drivers of this. So if you're in a home that suits your needs, you're renting, it's rent controlled, it's significantly less than what your mortgage payment would be on that home, there's really no reason to purchase a home unless you're not saving any money in any other way. You're a bad saver. I've never been very good at keeping a routine or doing those kind of things. So for me, a mortgage makes sense because I do have that forced little bit of savings each month. The gap is huge. Like if you're in a rent control house that you can see yourself living in for 10, 15 years at a low rate, and in that case, it makes way more financial sense for them to stay in that home for a little bit longer. Another decision that drives the suitability of renting and buying obviously is different stages of life. One of the major catalysts for people purchasing a home is generally couples get together, they decide they want to start a family, they decide they want to move somewhere else, they decide they want to have 6 dogs and raise golden retrievers. Obviously that's very difficult to do if you're in a small place. So lifestyle is a huge driver of rent versus buy. In a rental unit, obviously there's typically a lot more restrictions of what you can do. A landlord isn't going to be very open to the idea of you knocking down a wall to make room for your mural painting project. If you have needs that are beyond what you can rent, and it gets to the point where the product that you want isn't going to be available for rent, that's the time when people generally buckle down and start looking for home ownership, to have that freedom that they can do effectively whatever they want with their property. Another reason of rent versus buy is security. Generally speaking, it's a very comforting thing to know that, hey, I own this, I know where I'm going to go home at night, no one's going to sell this out from under me, and I have a say in what's going on in my community, in my neighborhood, and as you pay property taxes, depending on what municipality you live in. Barring any kind of mortgage delinquency or default, it's very, very difficult for you to actually lose that asset. Renting, in my current market, we have very, very strong tenant protection, so tenants do have a lot of security. However, it is uncomfortable if your landlord decides to sell the house, you get an acrimonious relationship. Being in conflict with the person who is responsible for your housing is not a pleasant place to be. Well, that can be very unnerving to constantly be worried about having to move. So generally speaking, the larger the rental unit gets, the more likely it is to be sold, because typically those units go up in value more quickly. A studio apartment is less likely to be sold than a landlord than a 3-bedroom detached house in an oncoming prime neighborhood. And we see this all the time as well, where a long-term tenant in, say, a single-family detached home in a neighborhood, property values go up, it makes more sense for that landlord to sell that asset, get all that money back, move it into something else, and now that tenant who has a lifestyle that is a 3-bedroom detached home lifestyle is now stuck with trying to move that lifestyle into a maybe smaller space, maybe renting the same thing is significantly more expensive. Usually at that point, that's when someone decides to move into home ownership. And because they've been saving money, because maybe they've been in that house for 10 years, they've been squirreling away, they're now in a position where they can be able to do that. Another big reason is just purely financial and wealth building. Is that the best place to put your extra money? When you're looking at your primary residence, there's a lot of things that go into it that are difficult to actually make money over time. When you get in, there's land transfer tax, there's all the property taxes that you pay, there's all the mortgage interest that you pay, there's utilities, and then there's upkeep on that as well. That is all should be considered in any calculation in terms of the money that you're going to make. Asset appreciation, I would view that more as speculation versus investment strategy, because markets can change at any time. So it's good not to bet on some kind of crazy asset appreciation. We've been in a bull run of real estate in Canada for, let's say 40 years, or coming out of a correction now at this time, but who knows, so viewing your house as something that will just inevitably double over time isn't necessarily a prudent financial strategy. Now, in terms of forced savings and building equity, yes, that is true. Having that forced little bit of principal every month is reassuring, but of course, all of those so-called gains can be wiped out by market conditions, interest rates, mortgage interests, real estate fees, and land transfer tax over time. So yes, you'll be able to get some money back when you do eventually go to sell, unless you've been refinancing your house over and over and over again to buy, cars and boats and cottages and jet skis and things that aren't actually assets. Be careful what you refi for. Versus, hey, maybe you're in a rental and it's significantly lower than your monthly income. Maybe you're a very conservative investor. You're like, I'm going to take all this cash and I'm just going to park it and make sure that it's there. Make sure that that money is paying me every month versus, me paying interest payments, property taxes, utilities, and insurance. So what to do if you want to own an asset as part of an overall investment strategy, but the type of home that you want maybe financially out of reach. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I do want to own something in case I get kicked out of this as a plan. There's nothing wrong with becoming a landlord, getting a small one-bedroom condo in a market that you can afford, getting your foot on the bottom rung of the property ladder, making sure that that can be rented so those costs cover your mortgage payments as part of an overall strategy and as a hedge against inflation. Don't factor in any asset appreciation at all. Just think of that as like, hey, this is a money rock where someone is going to agree to pay off this loan for me. All right, so I hope that these pros and cons of buying versus renting, you found this helpful. As always, if you like this kind of content, please do share, like, and subscribe. And if you want to get together and talk about your own unique real estate goals, you hit that link below. We will be in touch with you right away.